On this Friday, and this is an exclusive for my Facebook page. Poetry. Let's talk about that for a second. My students' eyes popped out of their head when I talked about poetry last week, because we were learning about figurative language. And so I thought about many of our STEM students, many students who are very much moved by informational text. And how can we get students to fall in love with clearly what is the best writing? The most concise and power-packed and impactful writing ever. It's always poetry. Now, there's a deeper question I'm driving at, and that is, how can we get students to love literature? That's very broad, and I suggest that what we really want to do is use specific instances, specific poems, specific stories. That is the key. From there, perhaps, if we repeat this process of introducing meaningful poems to our students, meaningful stories, meaningful novels, that they will walk away a little more persuaded that the world of literature has something to say that nothing else can say, and no one else can say it in quite the same way. So here's another interesting thing. So I'm going to talk about two things. One will be the use of form. The other will be figurative language. And when my students understood that you can have a dictionary definition of a word, home, a structure in which a set of people live, four walls, a foundation, a roof. Connotative meaning, a place where we feel safe and at home, right? We feel welcome, we feel nurtured, and there are expressions that you and I are familiar with, we use all the time. We'll say something like, I feel at home with her, right? I have a home in my grandmother, right? Meaning that I could meet my grandmother on a crowded street in New York City, far away from any dwelling place, just there in the middle of traffic, with the subway below us, and the crowds with us, and the buildings above us. And I can hear her call my name and feel instantly at home. I have a home in my grandmother. So in should not be taken literally. There's no, like your grandmother didn't swallow a tiny little, like a Monopoly home, right? A game piece. I have a home in my grandmother, right? In, meaning with, as represented by. So when my students understood that poetry makes exclusive use of figurative language, it invents its own figurative language, and oftentimes poetry uses both the literal and the figurative meaning of a word, and oftentimes it doesn't want us to really feel like, oh, this definitely is the dictionary definition of the word home, because it will often suggest things and purposely confuse us, because it wants us to question, say, is he talking about the feelings of home? In other words, a poem might say, she went home. She went home. Instead of saying she returned to her apartment. And so you ask yourself, what did the poet mean? And oftentimes you get what you look for. If you're looking for a literal meaning, the poet has rewarded you, because you will indeed find that this character did return to her apartment. And then you ask yourself, well, why did the poet use the word home? Ah, now when you look below that surface, you have that this person went to a place, whether it was a tent, a cardboard box, an apartment, a mansion, a 3-bedroom home in the suburbs. They returned home. There was something there that was drawing that person. Was it a relationship? Was it the memories of her childhood in that dwelling place, that beloved tent? And so we dig deeper, and then we read the second stanza in the poem, and we find out that the poet has given more hints. And then there's this flood of dopamine when we discover things. Now, do you see what I just did? I unpacked the use of language in a poem. This is what I do in my classes. There was a 12th grader I have. Okay, so when I worked at the charter school, which is a homeschool charter school run by the county, and I had a 12th grader. She was 3 months from graduating. Okay. Now, you might have an epiphany, an awakening, a breakthrough as a 9th grader, a 10th grader, maybe an 11th grader. But to go into the last few months of your high school career and to say to your teacher openly in your oral presentation, I've become, how did she put it? I now enjoy poetry for the first time in my life. That is huge. And so we took a poem, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. There's a consistent metrical pattern in that poem. There's a series of syllables and non-syllables, or stressed syllables, unstressed. I'm not going to analyze the poem for you right now. I'm not going to bore you with scansion on that. I will say that this poem has a simplicity to it. But when you analyze the depths, when you hear the sounds of these syllables, the stresses, you realize that there's an intensity of feeling with this poem, which is about one's father dying and whether or not he goes gentle into that good night. He just gives up. And his son is saying, rage, rage against the dying of the light. And so that repetition is alive. Well, we took that poem in class and we had discussions. And they were rich discussions. And then came time for the project, and the students had a choice board. And they could choose from 10 different formats to show what they learned in that unit. Well, this student usually did videos because she is almost a professional videographer. And she's filmed documentaries. High-level student. She chose to analyze a poem out of all the choices. And so what I would say to you as a parent looking for your student to stand out as a pediatric surgeon, a general practitioner, a scientist, a computer science major, a computer engineer, right? An accountant, a business person, a teacher, a business owner, somebody who works in genetics, or any number of hybrid fields that some of you are thinking about. Think about the power of writing, the power of reading. power of the symbol, the power of figurative speech, figurative language, figurative words, similes, metaphors, personification, and just understanding these things. My students, their eyes are open. And suddenly they realize how everything makes sense. The songs that they sing have a beat, but they also have catchy lyrics. And students sing these songs and it frames their life. It explains what life is to them in an understandable way. A beautiful way. Do you want to give your child that power in their writing? Do you think it would benefit them as they're writing their personal statement to colleges? Would it benefit them in their advanced placement English class? Would it benefit them in their AP exam, their SATs, their ACTs, their high-level exams to get into elite high schools, elite academies, right? Scholarships, how to tell a compelling story. So metaphors, symbols, similes, analogies allow us to take the very complex ideas and to compare them. My love is like a freeway, right? My love is a used car. Why? Because she is made of old-fashioned parts. She has value, right? I take her as is. She is a used car, right? It's hard to get her started, but once she gets going, people see her from miles away and marvel at her faithfulness after all these years. She's got real chrome, right? So I just came up with that just here in the moment. So when your child understands this power that they have with language, they will not only use it in their writing, they will understand what they read. And they will dig deep into that. They will read Shakespeare, and suddenly their mind is just going in all sorts of directions. And then it all makes sense with life. And that's when we begin to see the world as this place, this gathering place of stories, right? I've told you some stories today. So that is how to get your kids to fall in love with literature. You want to look in the description of this video for the information. If you're seeing this on YouTube, perhaps, I have a Facebook page where I post videos like this all the time. Some of them are much shorter. Some of them are 1 to 2 minutes long. I also have an online group tutoring practice for advanced and aspiring students. We help students get better grades, spend less time in the struggle of writing. We teach students the writing process so that they can be successful in their AP level courses, their honors level courses. They can be successful when they reach college. And lessons and courses and units are rigorous, engaging, and high level. They can survive. And they'll be powerful communicators. So that's what we help our students with in high school, the high school age students. Okay? Occasionally I might take a junior high student if they're advanced. I'm also a published author, and I teach students advanced writing skills. I've read many, many books on how to write novels. I've been through screenwriting training with the great Robert McKee. And so I know how to teach students the exact techniques for telling compelling stories. Not cliche stories. Not stories of struggle and overcoming odds and coming out stronger. You say, what? That's a real story. That's a good story formula. Right. It's a story formula. But in real life, there are contradictions. People are faced with irreconcilable choices. I was just watching Les Miserables, the concert, and Jean Valjean is saying in that musical, as the mayor of this town, who's been discovered by one general, I think Valpere, that he had some moral failings. And so Jean Valjean sings, "If I speak, I'm condemned. If I stay silent, I'm dead." How does that story turn out? I have no idea. But there's 2 hours left in that Les Miserables concert. You better believe I'm going to be watching that and figuring out what happens in his story. Talk about getting readers to stay glued to their chair and attentive and excited about the story. We present them with the contradictions that are in life. There's a technique for that I've learned, and no other tutor will teach this. Tutors will address writing, but how many of those tutors out there address holistically organization, executive functioning skills, writing skills, how to capture and grow ideas? Only 2 reasons why students don't write. Number 1, they don't know what to write about. Number 2, they don't know how to write it, or both. We give that to them. We give them that gift. Ideas. What ideas are we talking about? That's another video, right? That's my reading adventure journal. Okay? So, what is your next step if you're interested in finding out more about the tutoring or the tools? There are a lot of tools that I offer. There's a movie group that I offer. There are lessons that I offer. I just give them away for free. But there's only one step you need to take. Contact me and set up a student success session. Right? We will connect your students' frustrations and their goals with a roadmap based upon my 15 years of teaching experience and 20 years of tutoring experience. And I will give you a roadmap for them to follow. I'll give you tools. And so you'll get some of those freebies. And then we have an 8-week, actually it's a 12-week online group tutoring. 3 days a week. It's actually 2 days a week for regular 1-hour sessions. The third day is an office hour, and it's whatever you want it to be. Homework help, more help on specific writing units that we're working through. And it's 4 weeks, one type of writing, another 4 weeks for a second type of writing, and the third 4 weeks within this 12-week cohort for a third type of writing. So we're about to finish up our our first 4 weeks. So there's still time for you to, if you want to be a part of our tutoring community. It's exciting. It's a workshop environment. Students get one-to-one feedback, one-to-one attention, assessments, pre-assessments, an acceleration meeting to make sure that I know and you know and the student knows what their goal is for that 8 or 12 weeks. And that becomes the guarantee of the tutoring. Okay? So it's done very deliberately. And so I think that's all I want to tell you for now. But yeah, ask about that student success session. And if you're part of my Facebook group page, this is a $99 value, by the way. It will be $49.99. Or ask how it can be free. Okay, I'll explain that. And that price will count towards the tutoring if you choose to do the tutoring. Okay? So I will prorate it towards that. I think that's what you call it, or it's a deposit towards whatever the terminology is. All right, so it's been a long day. I'm kind of talking slow and deliberately. And I look forward to chatting with you guys soon.